All right, let me know when. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the July 26, 2021 Indianapolis Public Library Board meeting. Andy, can we have a call to roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Biederman,
Present.
Mr. Bixby,
Present.
Dr. Masada, present, Ms. Haynes. Oh, here. Reverend Robinson,
Present.
Judge Salinas,
Present.
and Ms. Kibble. Here, we have four.
All righty, moving on to item 3, the public comment and communications. At every library board meeting, we open up time for the public comments. We welcome feedback from the public about the Indianapolis Public Libraries, and this is the time when the public may address the library board. If there are several of you that are representing the same group, please select the spokesperson. Please do not repeat the same comments someone else has offered. Please note also that the public comment time is not the appropriate forum for commenting on matters related to alleged employee misconduct. Any such matters should be brought promptly to the attention of the library CEO or the Human Resource Department for matters to be properly addressed in compliance with the established library policies and procedures. A 5-minute time limit will be allowed for each speaker. Each speaker should give their name and their address. Is M-A-H-A Mashan Amin? I'm sorry.
Hello, Judge Salinas, members of the board. My name is Mahassan Amin, and I live at 3235 Bonham Avenue, Bonham Drive, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46222. And for those of you who do not know me, I worked for the Indianapolis Public Library for almost 14 years before I left to go to work at IUPUI as a research librarian. I am here today to talk about some of the systemic racism that I experienced as an employee here. But honestly, I think I want to start at the end when I left the public library. I had worked at the Martinville Brightwood training for just over a year, and I was responsible for the Grow Google training. I purchased Chromebooks hotspots for the public, and after I left, I left behind lots of documentation for the work that I've done. After I was gone, I provided free labor for about 6 months, and after that amount of time, I requested to be compensated for the work that I would be done. I believe that the refusal to play Black and brown employees for their labor after they left is a systemic problem. I worked in IT. I saw former employees who brought back as contractors, and I felt that my labor was not respected. I finally had to communicate that if they were not going to pay me, to stop contacting me because my board has value. Eventually, I was paid for those services, but I think that is something that highlights some of these systemic inequities that goes into working and being a fan of the public library. I'm here today. I'm still a fan of the public library. I still respect everyone that works at the public library. But for me, the issue of disrespect and systematic inequality goes deep. It goes from before Jackie board. I recall I've been here 14 years. I applied for a lot of different positions, and one that stuck in my head was being told by the white female supervisor. I have a lot of respect for the emails. I'm not going to that, but I think there is a lot of system in order to make it fair.
Before we get started, I think there's an audio issue. I can't hear anything. I don't know if you guys can hear me. It's very, very faint. It sounds like maybe is there a wireless microphone somewhere? Like, I don't hear any of the table feed. And so I don't know if there's like an additional microphone somewhere and that's the only feed I'm hearing, but I don't hear any of the table mics. Sorry for the delay.
Okay. Well. All right, Ray, can you hear things now?
Oh yeah, that's so much better.
Okay. Molly, can you talk a little, make sure that it picks you up?
Hi, I'm Molly.
Yeah, it's a little faint, but I hear it.
Okay, I apologize for this, guys. We tested all this out, but just speak loudly and clearly, and
But are we live on YouTube?
We are still live on YouTube. That never changed.
Excellent.
On YouTube was garbled.
Yeah, so this should fix it, but anyone, because of the circumstance, just please speak up.
Can the speaker get closer? Can you turn
And I can. Okay. That's probably about as best we can do to try.
Can you move the speaker to the table?
Well, we gotta have it plugged in here, and so
I thought it was on a different port.
yeah, this way the camera can kind of see everybody, and if everyone just kind of speaks up, we should be okay.
All right, Ray, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. All right, my apologies to everyone. Molly?
Thank you. I just want to start right now by saying I was pulled aside and asked not to speak about my experience. For the record, I sent an email to our board this afternoon regarding a response I wrote to Jackie. So I'll just essentially read an email. I'm sharing a response I wrote to Jackie that has still not been recognized as read, understood, reflected upon, etc. The lack of response resonates as dismissal of the DEI work I'm helping to facilitate within our system and the work that Jackie claims to be doing. It's also a pattern in many of my efforts to call her in. And I quote my email. Thank you for reaching out. I would like to share a bit with everyone about being an ally. I don't think it's acceptable to say you speak for marginalized communities. The stress we experience, especially right now, is incomprehensible to many. Here's a quote from an article that might help define what an ally is and how we can be better allies to BIPOC within our system, both staff and patrons. Our system is our city, our community, our staff, and ourselves. We need to be able to step down from our privilege to help uplift voices who do not have the same platform. Being an ally means supporting marginalized community people by lending privilege and resources to pursuing social justice. Instead of trying to lead the change towards equity themselves, white people can elevate the voices and needs of people of color by decentering their own voices and creating space for others to have power, resources, and affirmation. I go on to share 2 additional links where I found this quote. I would also like an opportunity to address the board. I plan to discuss the following items. The D&I position, I have the job description here. It lacks the E for equity. It was posted about a month ago, closed, reopened, and added have a DEI certification strongly preferred. The requirements have a bachelor's degree with a master's strongly preferred. As someone who has applied, I can't go back to re-add any certification. So I brought my marriage certificate to my wife and my birth certificate showing my Latina mother. So the DEI position lacks the E, was reposted without interviews of internal staff. There are many qualified internal staff. One more side note. I was offered an opportunity to share my information without other colleagues, internal colleagues, to have that same opportunity. So I'm bringing that to light right now. The library proudly promotes from within as part of a strong commitment to providing career growth opportunities for employees of all levels. The fact that it's reposted does not support this mission. I'm seeing more clearly the tokenization of individuals and glass ceilings for those who are not yet people. Our organization needs to be challenged in a healthy way, and the best way to do that is with someone who knows what's going on to address issues, someone from within the system. After a call with HR, I learned the job description was modified to include have a DEI certification strongly preferred. I'm sure this is yet another financial barrier for POC who have lived experiences in DEI work. Coursework and testing are $2,874, while just the exam is $600, or a few therapy sessions. A quote from the staff newsletter. Internally, we have focused on training and education to bring systemic improvement to the workplace. Most staff attended navigating difference training a couple years ago, and more recently, all managers and supervisors have attended IPS's DEI training through partnership and leadership of board member Pat Payne. Thank you, Pat Payne. As one who attended navigating difference, I had firsthand experience and shared feedback with management. That training was toxic, led by mostly cis het folks
and the one Black woman facilitator left before the last portion of the training. I would be happy to go into details about that experience at another time. I have also attended Dr. Kane's training, and it was a healthier training. However, there were a few triggering moments from the cis het white folks in the room, many of whom are teachers. I've earned certificates for those courses, but I'm not sure if they will be honored if there are more decorated certificates in the pool of applicants. I should also mention that I've paused recruitment efforts because I'm ashamed and embarrassed of what is going on. I do not feel comfortable sharing job postings with my alma mater and other avenues of recruitment, especially with the intent to hire diversity when we are in this crisis. There's no way that Black, brown, queer, or disabled people, or any intersection in between, should enter a toxic work environment. With colleagues and friends encouraging POC to stay because we will bring the change, I have been asked by people not to give up on our institution. That's why I'm here, so we don't give up on our institution. A question was posed regarding why we stay with the organization. I can only speak for myself when I say that I stay to help Indy grow to serve its beautifully diverse population through local partners and community action plans I write. I stay because I invested in Indy. Although I was not born in Indy, I now can call it home in my heart because I own a home here. I have family that lives here now, and I have late relatives that are buried here. This is my home now. So thank you for your time, and if you would like to reach out to me at any point, I would be happy to elaborate more. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Amin, would you like to restate your comments so people on YouTube can hear it as well?
Yes, I can do that.
Again, my name is Mahasan Amin, and I think the part where the audio cut out was me talking about my experience with a white female supervisor in a position that I had applied for, telling me that I did not have the educational requirements, even though at that time my Bachelor of Science that I did complete before I completed my MLS and my public management certification, was that my education was not enough, even though she did not have the requirements for the job at all and never attained them. And to have that same female supervisor go on to congratulate a white male that she was bringing onto her team for being able to pass this drug test. To me, that was a very good example of just kind of how, as a Black woman, I have to do twice as good to get half as far as white people who are congratulated for being able to pass a drug test, not because they are graduating with honors in a few months. So that's pretty much where I am. So thank you for your time again.
Thanks so much. My name is Derek Ford. I'm a teacher, and I live in downtown Indianapolis near the Central Library. And over the past 2 months, I've been increasingly disheartened and later discouraged and then angered at the chain of events that have unfolded. I'm grateful to Bree Flannelly for exposing these, and I'm grateful for the union and the library workers and all those who've been involved in keeping this in the public spotlight. You know, the working conditions that are suffered by library workers, in particular those of oppressed nationalities and identities, such as Black women, are unacceptable. And if that surfaces, there needs to be a remedy immediately, right? An immediate remedy. And so I'm equally angered by the non-response of leadership to take accountability, real accountability, and institute real change, right? Diversity and equity trainings, I don't know if I would say they're bad, but I would say that they're not the answer. How many police officers go through them and then still kill Black people for existing, right? Still harass, oppress people for existing. They're sort of, they're sort of like a superficial way to address something without really addressing the root structural cause of it, right? And my anger also includes the dismissal of worker grievances and racist actions, especially in the most recent email we read, where they were framed as personal disagreements. I mean, this isn't only racist, it's also intellectually dishonest and incorrect, right? It's a matter of not only sort of not being racist, but also a matter of intellectual rigor. And I believe that leadership of a library should be, I'm sorry to say, smart. right? And should be intellectually rigorous. I think what message does this send to the white people in the city that the leadership is still in place, right? I mean, what message does that send? It says that you can succeed through white supremacy, right? And you'll be ostracized for challenging it. You'll be fired for challenging it. And I think, you know, as a member of the Indianapolis community, I think we should send the opposite message, that you should be fired for white supremacy and that you should be promoted for challenging it. I mean, I'd want to be fired if I was doing this kind of stuff, to be real, right? And I'm not saying that I'm, you know, 100% ethics or whatever. No. But there's no shortage of leaders capable of leading the library, right? I mean, if these were the only two, you know, the board president and the CEO are the only two people capable of doing this, you know, I don't know, maybe that's one thing. I don't even think so in that case. But there's no shortage of administrators in the world today, right? And, you know, whenever I talk to library workers of whatever sector they work in, right? Whether they're in the service staff, right? Janitorial service, collections librarians, right? Sort of generalists, they're incredibly thoughtful and smart. And they're the ones who really do the work at the library, who make the library run. And I think that they have a much deeper, more profound knowledge of the library and how it works, and are really much more capable of leading the library. And so in addition to joining the calls for the firing or the resignation of Knights and Salinas, you know, I also think that we need to really institute real community and worker oversight at the library. You know, I mean, how many people really feel like they're a part of this library system? I mean, raise your hand. I mean, I don't know if you did a poll, you know, at the transit center, how many people really, you know, do you feel like you know, you're a part of this? I don't think you know, we'd be very happy with the answers. And I think that the library system should be something that we're all proud of and that we play a real part in. And the fact that there's just been like dismissal after dismissal, excuse after excuse, you know, tactics like trying to, you know, get Black people to, you know, sign a letter supporting you. I mean, that just means that's inadequate leadership and is unacceptable. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Sharon Cruz.
My name is Sharon Cruz, and I live at 530 East Ohio Street. I am a grateful patron of the Indianapolis Public Library System, and I am here in support of the workers' calls for CEO Jackie Mentes and Board President Judge Jose Salinas to resign from their positions. I grew up exploring new worlds thanks to the window that the Southport Library granted me in the late 90s, the summer reading program. I read voraciously, okay? Not just young adult fiction either, like R.L. Stine's Fear Street, or new Nancy Drew mysteries, or classics like Little Women and Pride and Prejudice, but even more contemporary authors like Mary Higgins Clark. I worked my way through those fiction stacks like a girl with a mission. But for all of my reading, I never once was able to find any books that might help me connect with my identity as a hyphenated American. I never once saw any brown girls starring in my stories or clues on how to connect with my own heritage. I literally had to move away to a larger city to learn the vocabulary to describe my own experiences. I've spent the last 8 years in Chicago, and I'm happy to be home in Indianapolis. Now, to be clear, this lack of vocabulary is nobody's fault, okay? My parents are immigrants. They just wanted me to succeed, so they were fine with me simply assimilating and avoiding talking about race. But now that we know better, now that we know that casual racism, even as a joke, is harmful, that systemic racism and implicit bias may exist in us all, and that not talking about a problem doesn't make it go away, now that we know better, we must do better. This board must be prepared to guide this organization. And in turn, this organization must be prepared to guide the young minds through the challenges of the 21st century. This leadership has exhibited that it is not even equipped to handle the vestiges of the 20th century. The library workers have clearly attempted to bring their concerns to the attention of this leadership and we're literally silenced. At what point should we, as taxpayers, put our collective foot down on behalf of those we rely on to keep our libraries running? Now, I believe that Judge Salinas and CEO Nidus are good people who have had the best of intentions. But their opportunity to address this appropriately as leaders came and went. If we are so afraid of what a former employee will say on the record that we would literally prevent her from being heard, we have severely mishandled this issue. The response of this board and its leadership to this outcry has been callous and embarrassing to this community. Our city must be better than this, and this means ensuring that we are all educated on ways to talk about the difficult topics that are facing our society, like how racism has shaped it. When our leaders cannot even recognize their own biases, they cannot lead through these difficult conversations. I am here to call for Judge Salinas and CEO Jack Francis to step down as the workers will call. Thank you so much for your time.
The right things down so I don't forget. Good evening to members of the board. My name is Stephen Lane. I'm a resident of the Hallville neighborhood. I'm also the special collections librarian in charge of collecting Indianapolis history, as well as institutional history of NDPL. I want to start off my comment by thanking my former colleague, Bree Flannelly, for exposing a major weakness in our library leadership and the ability to properly address the concerns or issues of racism and ableism Black library staff and many library staff experience in the workplace. I witnessed how our library board president had Bree's microphone muted, effectively committing an act of censorship of someone expressing concern about public institutions. Censorship is something that we take seriously in our field. I think censoring a concerned member of the public who is concerned not only with the buildings, but with the people working in those buildings who are being mistreated prompted me to take this stand here today to say enough. And Bree showed us that at all levels of this public institution, there's a lot of silencing taking place to those who are suffering from workplace abuses. This climate study that is currently in the works would not be on the table without her act of bravery. I want to thank former DEI Director Jessica Moore for tasking me and Shanika Haywood to look into the institutional history of NDPL through the lens of race. Through her vision to explore our very own institution's history, we see that systemic racism has been here a long time, as librarians in the 1930s and 1940s worked hard to ban and limit Black children in certain branches they considered white branches. They were successful at doing so at Riverside Branch, and it remains to be seen if that has happened in any other of our branches. We see that those outdated levers of power still exist in the NDPL system, and our current CEO and others in leadership had no problem pulling those levers of power to do harm on Black teens by calling for more police in certain branches that subconsciously are still considered to be white branches. We see that a former staff who worked hard to engage inner city teams at Central Library, and then who voiced concerns about experiencing racism in the work environment was effectively muted and not believed by leadership that what she was experiencing was even real. Well, that ends today. I want to thank members of the board for tasking me with looking into the history of NDPL's first Black librarian, Lillian Childress Hall, while executive leadership seeks to honor those with money. We also let this trailblazer in our library system fall to the sands of time, almost forgotten to our institution, which acts as a form of erasure and censorship. Lillian Childress Hall started at NDPL in 1921, did so much for this institution in our city we call Indianapolis. She was nationally recognized in the field in professional books and local newspapers, yet there is no wing named after her within the system. No, she wasn't monetarily rich, but was part of the rich history of Indiana Avenue and Crispus Attucks High School and also the Indianapolis Public Library. She cannot be forgotten. I can only imagine what she went through when trying to solicit resources from leadership at that time to properly serve the patrons who came to her branch, especially based on Marguerite's testimony last board meeting of how a branch in a Black neighborhood of Martindale Brightwood is understaffed and under-resourced. There is a renewed search to replace the new branch manager that was just hired over that said branch. We see that the old and outmoded systems of power of subjugation are still intact within NDPL's work culture and concentrated in the hands of a few people. An outmoded system that make it so staff are afraid to speak up and voice their concerns about racism, sexism, and homophobia, as well as other types of workplace abuse. We've heard accounts from staff that nothing happens when those issues are brought forward, and I can attest to that, such as the email we received from our CEO to only email the CEO directly regarding COVID-19 related concerns, which these concerns directly affect our health and the very lives during this deadly ongoing pandemic. Because our board president didn't want to hear from all of us. Meanwhile, those in leadership were on Zoom and working from home, while many Black and brown staff, and many white staff as well, didn't have such a luxury. We provided crucial information services at risk of our very lives, and leadership made choices every step of the way to maintain the outmoded system of power and pull those levers of power that effectively silenced and ran out so many Black employees and silenced the current ones that one board member accurately referred to as field employees. Well, time shifts and the culture and society we serve shifts along with it. In order for the Indianapolis Public Library to shift along with this changing tide and changing demographic within Indianapolis, we call for a change in leadership, starting with our current CEO and board president. Let's heal from all of this. Let's dismantle the old levers of power and send the ones willing to use them on to future endeavors. Let's reshape how power is distributed throughout the system and create a system that truly empowers every worker to feel valued within the Indianapolis Public Library. This will only improve our institution's standing with the city we serve and love. Thank you so much.
I'm Michael Torres, I'm president of Aspen Local 3395, representing public library workers here in all 24 branches. I want to say that we deserve a workplace where staff can come to work and be their authentic selves so we can service the community fully and honestly. The issues of racism and bias that were brought to our attention are causing an unhealthy and toxic work environment. When staff are spending time on just getting through the workday because of these experiences, it prevents us from providing our community the service they deserve. We're struggling. 7 people have come forward with their racist experiences of bias, homophobia, xenophobia, and sexism. 5 articles and 2 op-ed pieces have been written, and a national library periodical has contacted me and others about the same issues. In addition, the union is about to launch an anonymous incident reporting form and an exit interview survey where staff could report their experiences in order to document their experiences for those who are apprehensive to speak out or come forward for fear of retaliation or in case they want to return. This is not ending. Just this weekend, a leaked email appeared to be written by our CEO is asking for Black leaders to write letters of support. It was unleashed and spread on social media. After reading, the CEO called these testimonies of racism and bias, which took tremendous courage to speak about, calling them personal disagreements and not accurate. We realize that our leader still does not fully understand what is happening in spite of the long list of things she has done or put in place to address these issues. What is your quota of testimonies you need before you believe us? I have spoken to members of our Latino community, and they are disappointed in our board president's behavior. An elected judge should not be silencing anyone bringing testimony, or a trustee or as a judge, as a trustee or as a judge. We do have free speech in America. Therefore, due to the urgency of recent events, the union sent an invitation to members to discuss what we thought should happen next. Because we feel the CEO appears to be in denial in her part of what is happening to our library, we collectively agree they should step aside. Our thriving library system needs to begin healing, and we do not believe it could happen with our current CEO and current board president in charge. Once this occurs, we will work with community and staff to create the kind of leadership we believe would best suit this community, so we can go back to be the beacon of service we know we have been and can be again. Thank you.
Colleen Thompson.
Hi, my name is Connie Thompson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a regular patron of the Perry branch of the IPL. So most of us have already seen or at least heard about the leaked email from Jackie Nice that she sent to a prominent Black leader in the city asking for where she was disregarding legitimate complaints from Black employees that have been ongoing for years. We can see that she not only does she tokenize her relationships with Black professionals, but she asked them to tokenize themselves for her benefit, to avoid accountability for her own gain. This is so blatantly an example of racism. It's a textbook example of professional racism. And as a patron of the library, that racism is alarming and drives me away from returning. And it's not just Jackie. Her racism is so evident in that email that it's clear that she's not very good at hiding that racism. So my question is, how did she get onto the board? Let alone stay on it for as long as she has. She's been allowed to get away with it because she's only a part of the whole picture of the systemic racism baked into the administration of the library. Bree Flannelly, a woman who was recently ostracized by administrators into resigning, put her blood, sweat, and tears into starting new projects for the benefit of the most oppressed in her community. These efforts were shut down by administration, which deprived dozens of disadvantaged teens of a program that actually helped them with resources that were unavailable elsewhere. Bree was building a program that gave to the community in a way that this library claims to serve people. She showed leadership. She showed that she's a visionary. And the administration has, by contrast, only served itself and has not been visionary, but instead chosen to maintain the system in which they hold power. If the library wants to fulfill its duty of serving the citizens of those who live and work in Indianapolis, then the administration should be people who look like Bree, people like the patrons of the library, not careerists who are using administrative positions as a springboard into a political career.
Hello, my name is Doris Jones. This is my daughter Rosetta. And we're here because we personally stand strong with the union workers. And also as a patron that use your library facilities, but also as a former union leader, is really, really, I would definitely share with y'all my experience. We moved here from Chicago 10 years ago. We have better services in Chicago than we do here. We moved here when my daughter was over a month old. Well, actually over a year old. And we use the Irvington Library branch facility off Audubon in East Washington. Myself, my daughter, and my aunt were the only Black family in the library. While there were other white families there with their kids. Out of all the kids that was making enough noise, of course, a year-old gonna be fussy. They came up to only me, my aunt, and my aunt telling us to quiet my daughter. But don't even tell all the other families and stuff to calm their kids down. Now, how fair is that? It's not fair. Because you ousted us out based on what we look like. I went to college too, before moving here. There's many other Black workers that went to college too, just like me. So when I received that response from the CEO herself, saying that, oh, we are definitely gonna work out issues in regards to women. I ain't said about women. I said women and men, people of color, Black. We're smart too. But when you respond to that, that's denying and that's gaslighting. You're gaslighting and stuff, my experience, you're gaslighting all these Black workers' experience. That's unacceptable. And it's gone for too freaking long. And the thing is, when you deny me, you deny my daughter's future. You deny her voice. I may be Black on the outside, but I'm technically mixed. But still, the fact of the matter is you look on the outside and now looking at the fact that I got education too. We use the facilities. If it wasn't for us patrons and for the workers, y'all wouldn't have a freaking library at all. We have to use your facility because we don't have computers. We don't have printers. We don't have stuff that we need to print out resumes, to use the resources for the internet. We need these resources. If we don't have things at home, that's why we come to your library to use these things. So we can be able, at the time, like in my situation, had to find a job where we don't have a computer or a printer or anything else we need to use at home. I proudly stand with these workers. I proudly stand with every single Black patron, including my aunt who be using your library. Seriously, it doesn't make any sense. It needs to change. And I'm sorry, honestly, where I'm from, we hold people accountable. So either y'all gonna do something about it or step down. One way or the other. Do something or step down. Because when you deny me, you deny my daughter's future. That's what it comes down to it. And you deny every Black kid in the community and every Black worker that work at these library facilities to make y'all look good. Their ideas, everything that comes from them is to actually make it better. We're supposed to be here, and we always told while growing up, we're supposed to make the world a better place. If it wasn't for the Black workers that's giving you the ideas like Ms. Brianna, seriously? That's giving you the ideas, that's giving you the tools, but then you want to deny it? That's the problem. You need to put aside the bias which you have towards Black people and start working on the future of these Black kids and these Black leaders, like my daughter, like any other Black kid who use your library facility so they could pass and go on to the next grade, so they could pass on and go to college. Like I said, put yourself in our shoes for once. If you can't do that, then you need to step the hell down and learn about from our society, our history. If you can't do that, you need to put your bias and stuff and your ignorance aside. My point, exactly. I stand. Thank you.
And do we have any comments that we can go into that?
Yeah, yes, sir. This first one is from a patron by the name of Catherine Palmer.
Now that we're done at this side of the room. Thanks, Randy. Try and kind of get it in the middle here. Just try and make sure.
All right, this is from a patron by the name of Catherine Palmer. Ms. Palmer says, I just wanted to say that the lending library installation that used to be on the circle was something that was so amazing. My daughter and I always look forward to the treasures we would find and be excited when we saw the books we contributed had been borrowed. That program was so neat and gave my daughter a feeling of connection to the library by having an association within the community. Thank you. The next letter is from a patron by the name of Lori Lamont. Ms. Lamont says, I'm writing to ask the board to explain what they're going to do about the CEO's continued racism. Writing an email recruiting Black people to speak up for her is so completely not okay. I've been a longtime patron and library supporter, but I can't support these actions or the way they're treated Black staff and patrons. I'm asking that Jackie Medius resign as CEO so the library can hire a Black woman to run the library properly. Then the last, we received a very long submission for public comment through our online form from a Todd Gridden that focused on several aspects of library board governance, meeting conduct, and library leadership. It has been forwarded to all board members, but due to the fact that it is too long to be read within the 5-minute time limit, we will instead be attaching it to the minutes of tonight's meeting, which will be available on the library's website. That's the last.
Just reminded by my colleague that the board may have comments. Any board, if anyone from any of the board members want to make any comments?
I would like to make some comments. I was taking copious notes, not disrespecting you by checking my phone or anything like that. I was taking copious notes. And your messages from Mahassan, Molly, Derek, Sharon, Stephen, talking about the many things been going on. Lillian, talking about Lillian Childress' history with this library and how important recognizing her contributions. Michael Torres, Connie Thompson, Doris Jones with your daughter. We hear you. And I know that this board has said it's going to make changes. It's not going to be just quick, fast, and dirty, because careful work must be done. The diversity policy and HR committee is moving forward, and it has accepted the notion that we're going to have a climate improvement process. I heard when, I can't remember, I wrote it down, I think it was Michael said that an anonymous form will be developed by the union. You know, these are the kinds of things that we have to pay attention to. And then thank you for sharing. This is not an easy time, and we recognize that this is a time for change. The power relationships that you talked about, the things that you said in regards to power relationships and how they must shift, must be honored, and we must attend to them. From each one of you, we heard, and we did not, and we will not discard what you have said. It's critically important. All of you, thank you. Because we know it takes courage to do this. A lot of courage to stand the board, to stand before the CEO. So we appreciate that. We appreciate you speaking your truths. Thank you.
Anyone else have comments? Okay. All right, we'll move on to item 4, approval of the minutes of the executive session, regular special meeting. That will be the June 23rd. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting held June 23rd? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Will, Jackie
I wanted to ask if you will be speaking more, or giving us an update on the building ambassador and the title change to library security assistant.
Dr. Payne, I was not planning on addressing that this evening. I understand you did meet with John Helling
I did.
to
That was
get
a great
a briefing on where that stands. We did not add that to tonight's agenda.
Okay, then I'll talk to John, because we do have, okay. Because there are some concerns about that.
Any further discussion on the board meeting minutes of June 23rd? Angie, can we have a call to vote?
Mr. Peterman,
Approve?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Machado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item B, the minutes of the regular meeting that we had on June 28th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting that we had on June 28th?
So moved.
Moved in second, any discussion? Angie, can we have a call roll?
Mr. Peterman,
Approve?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Machado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
We'll move on to committee reports, Finance Committee, Dr. Payne.
DJ. Good evening.
We had a finance committee meeting on July 12th. And we went over all of the items under the finance committee section. So I'm going to be very brief, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask.
What page is that on?
The first, the treasurer's report is on your PDF page 25. So I'm gonna, first item is the treasurer's report for the month of June. It covers the first 6 months of the year, which is a pretty significant report for us to see how we've done so far this year, and also we use it in terms of preparing the budget for 2022. So far this year, we've gotten 25.2 million in revenues, primarily property taxes, and we have spent 20.2 million in expenditures. On the next page, you can kind of see where that compares to prior years. So it shows you 2018 through 2021. As you can see, 2020, there was kind of a dip there, and that was because of the delay of property tax collection in 2020. But other than that, we are on par with previous years and doing pretty well in terms of our finances for 2021 so far. Any questions on that treasurer's report? If no questions, I would like to ask for your approval for submission for audit.
Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
For a second,
Second.
any further discussion on the matter? Angie, can we have a call roll?
Mr. Peterman,
Approve?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Machado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, item 5B, is on page 42 of your PDF. That is just a briefing that we went over in the Finance Committee of the proposed 2022 budget. I'll just highlight quickly, our 2022 operating fund is about a 4% increase from our 2021 budget. Our growth quotient in terms of how much our property tax levy is allowed to grow this year is 4.3%. So we're actually under that growth of our property tax levy. So I think that is pretty decent, but I've included a lot of the details, the line by line details. We went over it in our finance committee as well. So one of you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. We have our public hearing on August 10th, and then we'll ask you to approve the budget on August 23rd. Oh, I did want to mention one more thing. As you guys know, the largest part of our budget are salaries and our benefits. So I wanted to talk about what our assumptions were there. We assumed salary increases of 2%. We also have a reserve of 1% to give flexibility for range shift as the market moves. We want to move with the market. And then we also have an assumption in there that we will move to a minimum per hour pay of $15 an hour for every position except for pages. So those are major assumptions. That category increased by 5.7%. If there are any other questions in any of the other areas, like I said, we have a line by line budget in there. We also include the debt service funds, the detail of what those debt service amounts are going to be for 2022. So any questions there, please reach out.
One quick question. Well, actually two. One is that about the initial draft, supplies are budgeted to decrease by approximately 341,000. Can you elaborate on that a bit? For the
Yes.
supplies.
We have a schedule to refresh our PCs and our laptops, and we had, and it's based on the year of purchase. And so we had a large increase in the number of PCs and laptops that were due for refresh in 2021. So that budget actually increased significantly from 2020 to 2021. So we show a decrease here, but really, if you're looking at a trend line, it's about normal from the prior years.
And the other had to do with insurance. The idea that it's going to, we plan to, the budget includes a 7% increase in health insurance. And then for wellness, a plan for an increase in the budget for wellness programs to benefit the staff, screening. Can you talk some more about that?
Yeah, so our insurance, we've actually done pretty well. We have HR Generalist Tisha, I'll call her out. I'm gonna butcher her last name, Galasi, I think it is. She's done an excellent job in terms of our wellness program. And we've seen that pay off in terms of we're self-insured. And it is actually showing an impact in our claims, our number of claims. So our self-insurance fund is doing okay, I think, as compared to the rest of the market. We're showing a 7% increase. Claims are expected to increase by 14.6% in 2022 because of all the delayed procedures that we anticipate people will have in 2022. But I think that our staff have been doing really well in terms of participating in these wellness programs. So we want to invest a little bit more in that as well.
I'm asking about the wellness because some of the comments that were made this evening spoke to stress, spoke to some significant issues with well-being.
Yeah.
And so I think that it bodes well for us to pay attention to the wellness issues, both physically, of course, in terms of Weight Watchers, but also in terms of the mental health issues and the stress issues that were brought forward this evening. I think that's something that we've heard again tonight.
For sure. I think that's something that we've actually talked about. We've asked our insurance consultants about how do we bring more of that? How do we encourage participation in mental wellness? Because, yeah, that is a concern. And how do we ensure that there are Black and brown therapists available to the staff and that staff know about those? So, yeah, that's a very good point. It is a concern.
Well, I just commend you in terms of making sure that the overall budget reflects a planned increase for wellness programs. The language is not specific here in terms of the mental wellness.
Right.
And that kind of specificity would be regarding the well-being of the staff, the patrons. who are served by our staff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how it impacts insurance. That's, yeah.
Which is a good segue to item C, right?
Yes, that is a good segue. I don't see. I appreciate you calling that out. That is very important thing. Item.
I'm sorry, I do have one question. and
Uh-huh.
It relates to the minimum pay increase of every employee except for pages of $15 an hour. How does that impact the average employee except for the pages from going from whatever it was at the lowest level all the way up to $15? How that impacts it?
Do you want, so I don't have the number of employees that will be impacted by that, but I can bring that, I can send that to you guys. We calculated a total of 131,000 costs, for our benefit eligible employees, and then, for our hourly employees, it was about 30,000. So our next item, so that was just a briefing, so there's no action item required there. Item 5C is actually that's not the health insurance fund, that is our liability insurance. This passed with a do pass recommendation from Finance Committee. Our liability insurance overall is going up by 2.4%. We have a recommendation from our insurance agent to stay with travelers again this year because building a relationship is important, but they do want to go out to market next year and see, kind of get competitive rates and see what things look like and push our carriers a little bit. So they're recommending that we stay with travelers this year. We did go out to market 2 years ago, and the rate is still lower this year than it was when we switched to travelers. So we feel we're still competitive. But our total insurance for the next renewal period is $326,000 approximately. Any questions on this one?
That is a resolution, right?
It is a resolution, and I would ask that you approve the resolution if there are no questions.
Two questions. Is there a motion to approve resolution 26?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Henry, can we have a call roll?
Mr. Bierman,
Approve?
Dr. McCarter,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Dr. Venus,
Approved.
and Mr.
Approved. Thank you. My next item is item 5D, and that is related to our health insurance. That's the establishment of a non-reverting self-insurance fund. And the purpose of this is to kind of stabilize ourselves, to kind of create a reserve and stabilize premiums for our employees over time. So what's going to happen is every year we appropriate funds from the operating fund and we deposit them in this health insurance fund. And if, depending on our claims experience, we might start to build a cash balance in this health insurance fund. And that can help us to make sure that we're maintaining a stable premium growth if there's any growth for our employees. So that's the main point of that. Any questions on it?
This is something you in favor of, correct?
Yes, yes, this is something we've researched. I've talked about since I started here, we're finally doing it. We weren't sure if State Board of Accounts would agree for us to do it because it wasn't clear in statute with Dr. Robert, and we clarified it, and we can do this non-reverting fund. So yeah, the city has one. This is something that most people are doing.
Is there a motion to approve resolution 27?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Just one question. I don't know a great deal about what the implications are about it. Can you just share a little bit more about the implications?
Yeah, so right now, when we appropriate, so our we are self-insured, and so, right now, we pay Anthem to be our third-party administrator. And so we pay them a level premium to figure out what they think our claims are gonna be this year. We pay a level premium, and then we settle in the next year, because we wanna maintain a level amount for budget purposes. So one implication of that is that we can now go out to market, and get more competitive rates in terms of our reinsurance. So we have insurance on our overall claims, and we have insurance on each. I might be getting too much into the detail.
No, but that's to offer opportunities other than Anthem.
Yeah, so yes, we could go out to other third-party administrators, and they might be more competitive. If we can fund as we go our claims. That's one benefit. The other benefit is that we can build a cash balance. And so let's say our claims are really bad one year. We can afford to not increase premiums on employees by the same rate as the increase in claims. If it was just a one-time thing, we can use our cash reserves to fund claims, to kind of even out that, so that their premiums are not going up and down. So
That's
those are the
very
two
helpful.
benefits.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board on resolution 27? Seeing none, Angie, can we call the roll, please?
Mr. Peterman,
Approve.
Approved.
Dr. Nakata,
Approved.
Ms. King,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last item, 5E. This is Resolution 28, 2021, transfer between classifications. We have two main transfers. One from our operating fund from other services and charges to capital outlay. And this is just to cover the purchase of an information desk at the Urban Center branch. And then in the rainy day fund, we just appropriated a certain amount. And the rainy day fund we've been using to kind of fund construction costs until we issue bonds. And so this is just to move into the actual category where we need those funds in the rainy day fund. Any questions on that?
That's the 1,287,000.
That's the 1 million. So we appropriated it in building and land, not knowing exactly what costs we were gonna have. So now that we know, okay, we need more in our architectural costs, we're needing to transfer to this character 3 from building.
Is there a motion to approve resolution 28?
So moved.
Is
Second.
there a second? Any further discussions or questions from the board on resolution 28? Seeing none, Angie, can I have a call to the roll?
Mr. Peterman,
Approve.
Approved.
Dr. Nakata,
Approved.
Ms. King,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We move
DJ,
on.
thank you for the excellence. Good job. I know
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Move on to item 6, the diversity policy human resource committee, and Chair Hope.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the opportunity to serve as the chair of the Diversity Policy and Human Resources Committee. I also recognize the challenges and opportunities in the important work we do. So I have a statement, an opening statement I'd like to make. I want to thank my fellow committee members, Pat Payne and Curtis Bigsby, for their participation and continued work that we're going to be doing together. I joined the library board because I believe in the value of the services that it provides to our community. I also remember how it served as a resource for me growing up and appreciate how it allows access to important information for children and adults alike. Since my appointment to this board of trustees 8 weeks ago in May, I have enjoyed and learned from numerous conversations with community members, family, friends, and colleagues. I've also had probing and sometimes tough conversations with the CEO, executive staff, and board members. And one of the highlights of my time so far is visiting the libraries across our community and seeing the good work that's happening in the neighborhood branches. And I'm going to be going out for a couple more rounds until I see them all. During this time, I've also tapped into my own thoughts about the difficult topics, the discernment, and the actions that lie ahead for the board. It is clear to me that I have a lot more to learn. However, the current climate and the feedback we've received require us as a board to thoughtfully reflect and develop a plan that moves us to a posture of leadership informed by engagement with our team, our stakeholders, and those we serve, and then carrying out an action plan to drive real change. As committee chair, I ask the board to give immediate attention with a bias for action. Action that signals to our respective appointing bodies, library employees, committee members, most importantly, our patrons, to lead a system that delivers the best services this public institution, our library, can provide. I thought it would be appropriate for me to outline what I see as the priorities for the Diversity, Policy, and Human Resources Committee going forward. The issues before us are a matter of race and equity without a doubt. They are also about culture, performance, leadership, and the efficiency of the library's human resources framework. We need to acknowledge the hard work of nearly 600 employees in 24, soon to be 25 branches around Indianapolis and Marion County. During visits to several branches and while at the opening of the newest branch in Perry, I've had the opportunity to meet members of the leadership team and those who work with our patrons directly. As a board member, I want to ensure that our team is encouraged and feels appreciated. As a board, we must ensure the library environment is a safe and productive place for all employees and that our teams are engaged and expressive. I continue to ask what is happening with the HR processes and framework that is causing employees to seek solutions where they're concerned outside of the system that should be designed to address them. This should be an area of immediate focus. During my discussions over the last couple of months, I've been very clear and outspoken about my grave concerns about the HR function. It is the process that is closest to our employees, and we should provide a safe place for everyone to express and seek assistance. When the committee meets next week, the agenda will include identifying a method to immediately address the issue of trust and accountability for the HR process and framework. We as a committee will ask several key questions about the process of investigating and reporting complaints. Secondly, we are working to quickly identify a confidential independent mechanism to receive and address employee complaints and concerns. And we will work with legal counsel to ensure this is implemented in a way that preserves confidentiality and processes the appropriate human resources tools. In June, Dr. Murtada outlined a plan to lead the planning of a climate improvement process. I fully support a review of the library climate study, and I'm encouraged that Dr. Murtada has agreed to lend her support to lead a process to design and create a place for healing and to optimize engagement and participation. Given the moral imperative of this work, as well as the heightened attention and emotions, the committee will also discuss the extent to which a neutral and independent, experienced third party will be used to administer the climate survey. The partnering firm should have specific expertise in DEI and similar initiatives. I think we can all agree, and I say this passionately, that there is still a lot of work to be done in addressing systemic issues and realizing diversity, equity, and inclusion. I trust that the Diversity, Policy, and Human Resources Committee is up to the task of leading on DEI and with coming up with workable solutions and recommendations for the board's action. I appreciate this opportunity to work with the board, and I look forward to meeting the challenges and celebrating successes as a team. Having concluded my opening remarks, I'll ask Mr. Curtis Bixby, the former chair of the committee, to report on the July 8th committee meeting, which he convened, and to invite Dr. Martada to add any additional comments.
Thank you, Hope, for that opening statement that you made. I know that since Hope is going to be the chair of that committee, we will also move forcefully within that committee under her direction to look at the climate study. We also had a meeting, like Hope said, on July the 8th, where we discussed the climate improvement process, what Dr. Murtada has brought forth all the way back into our June meeting. There looks like there have been some changes into that process, and which I'll let Dr. Murtada speak about that as well, so that we all are on the same page and that we're moving forward with the concerns of a lot of the employees here at the library branch. Not only do we recognize all the comments that were given tonight, this evening, we do have work to do here on the board. With that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Murtada for her comments as the lead with the climate study that will report back to the Human Resources Committee. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. I gave a commitment to this body, to the board, to lead a climate improvement process, one that would be an ongoing process, as the work cannot be done by a simple survey. But to begin that work, we must get autonomy, and we must get an opportunity for individuals who care deeply about the library. And in that way, the idea of having someone that is neutral, or an organization or a body that is independent, goes counter to what I had actually submitted to this body. On July 8th, at a virtual meeting of the Diversity, Policy, and Human Relations Committee, I further suggested a 7-member committee use a collaborative inquiry approach that can give us realizable short-term and long-term goals. After that, I also submitted that we needed to have, and part of this discussion was to have an even larger representation of the staff that work with the Equity Council of the library. To that point, I am suggesting, and I have suggested, that 12 individuals come together to be a part of a climate improvement task force or subcommittee working with the Diversity Committee. We want to make sure that the staff of the library's Equity Council are heavily included. So in this suggestion of 12 members to serve on the task force, I have included the following. I spoke with and have had a meeting with the Indianapolis Public Library staff, Garrett Mason, whose responsibilities include oversight for strategic planning and assessment. I've also spoken with Hope Tribble, board member and recently appointed chair of Diversity Policy and Human Resources. If, when asked, they are agreeable, that would result in 2 members of the task force. Members of the library staff who are members of the Equity Council have spoken up and said they would be available to work on the task force. I believe rather than 2, which I had initially suggested, that there be 4 members of the Equity Council that would offer valuable contributions. Partnerships are central to effectively delivering resources and programs to the Indianapolis community. 2 other members from the community partners, preferably school librarians, and importantly, those who understand how our libraries work, are important to this. It is important also to have people who are patrons to the library, and to have at least 2 members of patrons, people who come to the library, just as was presented earlier, people who care about the library and so are not independent, are not unbiased, but have a deep caring ethic and understand how very important it is to contribute to thinking through the improvement process. Finally, I have one colleague from the IUPUI's Library and Information Science Department who has worked to prepare librarians for years and has led collaborative inquiry and has agreed to serve. Excluding me, this group of 12 should be approved by the Diversity, Policy, and Human Relations Committee and can submit their bios and immediately work on strategic directions for this group. I believe that it's important that the bios be submitted so that you can see the breadth and knowledge, skills, and abilities of people who work in the library, who have been patrons to the library, who understand the equity issues of the library, and again, the ethic of caring and trust is critical to that. The library, there is urgency, and I've quoted this twice in the two-pager, that I submitted to the Diversity, Policy, and Human Relations Committee. And I said it again, for the library, there is urgency attending to issues of equity, race, and diversity. And this climate study must move forward in earnestness. Immediately relief is needed was the term used by a board member after hearing comments from the staff and the patrons. In order to offer some immediate ways for staff, administrators, and patrons to further share their anonymous views about the library's climate, the agreed upon survey will be administered, agreed upon, one that we agree upon, one that is vetted with the Equity Council membership, one that is also paid attention to the many voices that raise concerns and how we do this in a way that really reaches into the issues of power and relationship building that's necessary. Further, an interview protocol for administrators must be approved. Preliminary data from these instruments will serve to inform next steps. I also included in my message to the board a diagram. It's a very simple diagram that showed when you bring these things together, surveys, interviews, focus groups, and even case studies, this process really is an ongoing way to bring about some improvement for the library climate. I submit that in comments and I send it to you for the public record as well.
Thank you. This is your committee.
Oh, thank you. So we don't have any further questions, any further comments, just to say that I did send out an organizing email to the committee today to outline the way we'll operate, and we plan to set regular meetings starting in August. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Of course.
I heard two different methods for looking at and examining the input, the climate. So are we gonna deal with that?
I think we absolutely have to.
Okay, we do.
I've expressed that concern. Other members have also talked about the utility or the usefulness of an independent organization. And Dr. Matata and I have talked about that. I think we have to come to some agreement about how that looks.
Yeah, because I keep thinking back to what Dr. Matata said in terms of the use of an independent organization that the library has already used and how that went. So now comment is, oh, I'm sorry. The library used an employee engagement survey with significant results that were produced in 2018. And this was by an independent, neutral body. That was 2018, 2019, 2021. We're still faced with some of the same issues that were raised then and additional issues as well. And so I'm always wondering, when we say we have someone that is neutral and independent, I'm always questioning just how that plays itself out if we don't include the people who care deeply about this library. And independent and neutral does not characterize the work that needs to be done for this library and for the branches. We need people who are thoughtful, yes, smart, yes, but understand mixed methods. And I use the word mixed methods as a researcher Mixed methods means that we get quantitative and qualitative data. It allows us to be able, I'll be very brief, I'll stop after this point. It allows us to capture the richness of the thoughts, the feelings, as well as the experiences necessary, and even the differentiation between the different branches. I first met and worked with one of your leaders, Shanika Haywood, over at 38th Street branch many years ago. Since that time, I've had a chance to watch and see how she has progressed in the library structure. Her story of how she has done the work to get to a point to be a leader in the library needs to be captured. Not just seen as, oh, this is a problem in the library. Good things have happened. Also problematic things. To show the complexity of all of this work is very important. It's important that we do something that's not the usual way. Neutral, independent, that's the usual way lots of studies get done. It's time for us to do something that's very different, that gets to the heart of change and allows us to show the complexity of this work. Complexity. It's not simply a survey or somebody doing something independent or neutral. It's someone who really is thinking about the complexity, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we allow that to surface and help us to make our next steps. I appeal to the board to consider that as an important part of this work. And when you said in our last meeting that you would allow me to provide that kind of guidance to this work, I hold you to that. Thank you. This is just a quote that I want to leave with everybody. Albert Einstein said, problems cannot be solved by the same mindset that created them.
I just want to make a brief comment. I know that it's critically important that we look at every aspect within the climate study. I have been a strong supporter of making sure that it's fair, independent research that is done while we look into all the issues that are in front of us as a board. I understand that the climate study is very much needed. It needs to happen. But I also think that there's a way that we can mesh both together to make sure that we have a holistic approach that is, away from us as a board, but also includes the board in our outreach when it comes to the committee as a whole. So I have been a great supporter of a neutral, party in looking at it, but I think there are ways that we can mesh the two together to make sure that we cover all of our bases, as well as what Dr. Machado was saying when she did that. And I believe that the committee will look into that, under Hope's leadership, that we cover each one of those bases.
Thank you, Curtis. And I think I appreciate that we sort of put out here in advance of the committee process, those things that we need to consider. And I think, that's going to be part of the work. Thank you that we need to do as a committee to create something that has credibility with all sides and all perspectives. I won't even say sides, but all perspectives that are contained within the environment of the library. And we have received emails that have come from all perspectives. And we've also received emails from people who say they feel differently than what is being expressed in the meetings, but feel that they cannot express that. And so I think I'm looking forward to it, and I hope that we can take this conversation from here and have it during the committee meetings that we're scheduling next week.
I would like to propose that this work of the improvement process not be under the diversity committee. I would propose that, and I'd like to make a motion that this work not come under a singular committee, because the board itself already had approved of a climate improvement process. And I'd like to make that motion. Second.
Okay, it's been motion seconded that the climate improvement process not come under the diversity committee. Now we'll move to discussion on that motion, okay? And I'll start the process. I'm 100% in favor of the climate improvement process. And I have confidence that the diversity committee can find a happy medium where everyone's viewpoints are respected in the process. And we have to have a process. We have to know, like what you said, who's going to be on the committee, or I think what was the name we were going to use?
The climate improvement.
No, the task force. The task force. I think it's good that way. It doesn't get confused with the committee.
With the committee itself.
Yeah. So this task force, if they're going to be tasked with interviewing staff, interviewing us, there's certain parameters, there's certain confidentiality issues that need to be addressed. Who's going to pay for it? So that survey that you mentioned in 2018, I asked, and that was a process where we had an agreement with that company. They understood what they were going to do for the board and or for the library, and had not limitations, but parameters. And so as long as, from my perspective, as long as we understand and there are guidelines that this task force and who they report to and the people within that task force, if that's the route we go, as long as it represents the community, because what good is it if only one side, or one objective, or one perspective is heard? What good is that? It has to be everybody. We have 600 people that we address, that we are responsible to, of our staff. We're responsible to the whole public. And I understand that. But I am of the my viewpoint is 100% behind this. But I'll listen to other comments as far as the current motion.
Just one comment that I'm in favor of just about all that I've heard tonight, but I do want us to consider that we have a new chair over the diversity human resource and committee, and that I would love that we would maybe hold off for a minute to allow Hope to get her feet up under her and allow her to meet with the committee and then kind of work it out and come with, after everybody, if they have met, come back to the board so that she can have a chance to be thoughtful and bring a recommendation to us that represents all perspectives.
Is there any discussion or comments on the motion, the oral motion that's been put forth?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I don't have enough information to vote one way or the other on this today. I think it needs to be fleshed out a little more in committee. And I understand what you're saying, Dr. Murtada, and I hear you. I just don't have enough information to vote one way or the other on it. And I just think we need to flesh it out a little bit more, have more discussion, and then bring something to the board. So I'm not saying no, but I don't think I'm in a position to say yes or no.
Comments, discussion?
I just have one question. This proposal for a climate improvement process was never submitted directly to the Diversity, Policy, and Human Resources Committee. It was not submitted to them. It was submitted to the board. And so for it to become under the Diversity, Policy, and Human Resource Committee is questionable. And so that's why I said, why is it now under that? It was not submitted originally in that way.
I guess, I'm sorry. My view was that it was going to be submitted to the board as a whole for discussion. But then when it comes to the nuts and bolts, especially about the trajectory and the timelines and timeframes, it was going to go underneath the Human Resources Committee, which reports back to the full board anyway. So I didn't see where it would be an issue with it going under HR, because there are a lot of information that is confidential that is kept into committee. So it would be my recommendation that it would go back under HR unless there's some other reason why it shouldn't, for the committee to digress that information, to be able to report that back to the board as a whole, and then go from there. I mean, that would just be my opinion, as it relates to that, because there is a lot of confidential information. There's a lot of personal information that's given out in the HR committee that a lot of this will fall under me, in which it's ultimately going to go back to the board, but at least the nuts and bolts will begin underneath the committee, and then it will move on from there. That was just my
And
thought.
that's the very reason why I presented it to the board and not to the diversity, policy, and HR committee. I don't know how much longer we need to discuss this, but I'm very mindful that in all of the things that we have heard as a board, this came directly, and the reason why I brought it directly to the board was because the board has a challenge in front of it. It has a challenge that should not be relegated to another committee. It should be able to be able to actually say, we are going to take a stance on it. And what happens frequently is we move things to committees. And I appreciate deeply Reverend Robinson's point about we have a new chair for this committee. But the board never did say this is a part of a committee responsibility. The board did not decide that. And so now you're saying, we're going to move this to be under a committee. I'm mindful of the time, so I will withdraw my motion at this point. But I wanted to be very clearly stated that it was never intended to become a part of a committee, nor was it planned to be that way. And one of the reasons was because I wanted the board to show the community, to show the staff, to show the people who are really people who are working day in, day out, that we are going to take some steps to improve the climate process. I withdraw my motion at this time, but I am very clear that this was not an attempt to overrun or overrule what Hope Tribble is pointing out. It is an attempt to come back to the board and say to the board, we approve a climate improvement process. And that process, including anonymity, which I have stated very clearly, must be done. But that's what you do when you do research. You make every attempt to pay attention to the anonymity of every individual. And that's an important part of the work of a researcher. Motion withdrawn.
Okay.
I just want to ask one other clarifying question. And this actually came to me when I was looking at the minutes for the special meeting today. And in the minutes, item number 3 is titled Diversity, Policy, and Human Resources Committee. And item A is discussion of the staff climate study. So I just want to clarify that, and if we just make sure that that's.
I'm going to acknowledge that it came before the board because we were at that meeting and we all understood how important it was. And for me, out of the 3 committees, it seems the most logical one that it should go. I did not get the impression that you didn't want it to go before a committee. And that's a mistake on my part. I apologize. But we can certainly talk about that if we need to.
But Judge, I think the issue is whether we are going to bring in another independent organization or whatever you would have. Now, who's going to choose who that is, in fact, or whether we are going to have a process where more voices and more truths are able to be part of that process. That's how I see it. I think that's really, really important to do something a different way than it's ever been done.
All right. Hope, did you have anything else as far as the diversity committee?
No, I have nothing further.
No, nothing else. Thank you.
We'll move on to facilities committee. Our chair.
Chair.
We may lose Curtis. It's maybe great, but we still have a quorum.
Oh, one point, I'm not a member of the diversity policy and HR committee. That's, it's clearly recognized in the minutes that I am not. And so for me to put this under the climate improvement process under that committee, and I'm not a member of that committee, is of a concern. So I just wanted to note that. For the record.
I'll see.
I'm sorry, Sharon. All done.
Do you want me to go ahead? Okay. All right. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Sharon.
Hi. So we have on the agenda Resolution 2921, and it's the approval to establish a conditional guaranteed maximum price for site work, site utilities, building concrete, and structural steel, with the Skillman Corporation serving as a construction manager as constructor for the Fort Bend Branch Replacement Project. And the facilities committee staff would like to recommend that this be withdrawn from the agenda because of the excessive bids that came back. It's way out of our budget, and we need time to consider how we're going to deal with that. We were in discussions today with bond counsel, EJ, Jackie, and talking about how we might be able to secure more funding for both the Fort Benjamin Harrison project and the Glendale project. Both of them are facing budget overruns. It's been comments that I've made consistently every month. I come to you with any kind of a recommendation about the steel prices being excessive, and now it's expanding to other building materials. The bids that were received for both projects mirrored increases that are seen in the market. So we're comfortable that it's not because our estimators made a mistake or that there's other issues, but rather that it is a true market indicator.
Sure. Is the market beginning to stabilize at all?
There are no signs of that at this point, no. And even asking for any kind of a trend forecast, it's just very volatile, very unpredictable at this point. So the bids that we received on July 15th for the Fort Bend branch that we had anticipated bringing to you this evening, significantly over budget, and estimating them to be 17 to 20% over budget. So we need to reconvene. The budget was set and approved with the City County Council in 2014. We had put in escalators and anticipating how far these projects would extend into the future, but had no clue about what would be happening right now. So, like I say, both are facing similar challenges. The teams that we have working on our projects, Ratio and Skillman for the Fort Bend project, and KRM and Powers and Sons for the Glendale project. We've dug deep to cut what we could out of our buildings, reduced some square footage from our buildings in an attempt to bring it within budget. That these bids are just out of reach for us at this point. Yes.
So when can we expect to come back before they need to go up against more?
Right, and that is an issue, but in order for us to exceed the limit of what we had from the bonds that were approved in 2014, those limits have now been increased for new projects, so we're going to be going through the bond process again. The August 10th will be the public hearing for an amended and restated determination so that we can use a larger limit on those bonds for buildings. And the August 23rd meeting for the library board, that's when you would vote to approve the bond sale. And so that we can.
Another question, I think we need naive about this. Do we know how much steel we're going to need?
Yes.
Is there a way that we can purchase it now and then ourselves, the library, and then,
we have.
Okay. How's that? Because I know that's how it was done with the city with the new building. The Justice Center, they bought the stuff years ago because they knew the price might go up.
Yes, and we did, on the recommendation from the teams that are on the construction, we took that recommendation and that's what we brought to you last month to approve was
a pre-bid, basically just for the steel prices, because we saw those rising so dramatically. But it just wasn't in time. And we have a construction manager as constructor. So they are the ones that are releasing the bids, and they would be the ones that are responsible for a guaranteed maximum price for those bids. And well, yeah, we just can't do it. So we're looking at the schedule. Like I say, the teams that we have working on this really were creative in trying to reduce costs, as well as really going over the estimates and doing multiple estimates that aren't normally part of the project. And we so appreciate them working with us on this. We're working now to look at the bidding and project schedule so that those can be merged and blended with the bond schedule. Because we can't do the project, we can't start the construction of the project until we know we have the funding for it. And so,
Sharon, quick question.
yes,
Are there any penalties that we have to face with our construction partners because of delays?
delays will have a cost associated to them. And we've tried to anticipate that as we recast the budget for a new bond.
Or did EJ, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer Judge Salinas' question about buying like steel and materials ahead of time. Because we no longer have approval for the full cost of the construction, we no longer can go ahead and buy anything or spend any money in this project until we get approval for the full cost of the project. So until we go through this process and get approval from you guys and get approval from the city council, we have to kind of stop with any construction part of the project.
There's no motion now. So when do you want us, what do you want to do? We're going to come back with it?
So we are asking that it be withdrawn from the agenda. And then when we get more information about how the schedules are moving forward, then we'll bring it back to you.
Okay.
Most likely October board meeting. So
Last quarter.
yeah, so we'll give you more information about our planning calendar. And we'll have a first public hearing at the August 10th meeting. And but I can give you the highlights. The August 10th meeting will be the first public hearing. August 23rd will be a second public hearing and approval from you guys. And then we will go to City County Council. We will go through the municipal corporation. And then in October, they will approve. Hopefully, if all goes well, they will approve the bonds. And then we can begin our project. But we have to go through the full approval process, which includes waiting 30 days because of the size of the project to see if any taxpayers will file, if they can get, not petition remonstrance. They can get 500 signatures. We will then have to do it. We don't anticipate that happening, but it is something that you guys should be aware of.
And just a quick question, just curious. The construction projects that we have for these projects right now that we're gonna have to put on hold, once we get the funding approved, will we have to rebid the project?
Yes. And realizing that, yeah, prices are probably going to escalate and availability of
So there's no
material.
guarantee for the people who won the bids presently, currently, there's no
No.
guarantee that
And
they.
it wouldn't be fair, I think, to hold them to a bid that they submitted now, especially if the prices continue to escalate like that.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Move on to item 8, library foundation. Reverend Levin.
Thank you, Judge Salinas. Every month, the Library Foundation provides an update to the library board, and we welcome the opportunity to do that again tonight. We're happy to announce a virtual event with Dr. Tyrone McKinley Freeman, author of the Madam C.J. Walker's Gospel Giving, Black Women Philanthropy, doing Jim Crow. Dr. Freeman is the author, associate professor of philanthropic studies and director of the undergraduate programs at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. This event will be a training opportunity for our staff, board, and volunteers. We're pleased to partner with the Library Center for Black Literature and Culture, Communications, and Programming Departments to open the event to the public. Mark your calendars for September 14th at 6 p.m. for this virtual event. The Library Foundation congratulates the West Perry staff on the grand opening of the branch held on July 17th, and I believe a lot of board members attended that event, and I know they appreciate that support. Circulate, the major fundraiser for the Library Foundation, A Night at the Library, has been postponed to Saturday, March 12, 2022. We surveyed our donors and sponsors and found that there are some hesitancy with large in-person indoor events. We also found that there was not a lot of interest in a virtual event. Based on that feedback, we decided it is in the best interest of everyone to have the event in the spring when we can draw a more robust crowd. We appreciate your contributions to offset library staff ticket costs. Those staff discounts will carry forward to the next year. The Library Foundation thanks 134 donors who made gifts last month. The following are top corporate and foundation contributors. If you should have the opportunity to thank these donors, we would be grateful. Downtown Optimist Foundation, Griffith Family Foundation, Hoover Family Foundation, Indianapolis Colts, Nicholas H. Noyes Jr. Memorial Foundation, Pacers Foundation, Tanglewood Publishing, the Indianapolis Foundation Library, Tracy L. Haddad Foundation, and the Woodley Farah Manning Portfolio Management. This month, the Library Foundation is proud to provide more than $180,000 for library programs and initiatives. Examples of major initiatives that the Library Foundation supports is the Center for Black Literature and Culture, Digital Encyclopedia of Indianapolis, East 38th Street Youth Art Series, and the Book Club in a Bag. Thank you, Judge. That concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 9, report of our.
Thank you, Judge. Item in your packet, resolution 30-2021 is our routine finances, personnel, and travel resolution. And I would submit that to you for your approval this evening. There are no travel items in it because most of our staff has been able to do the bulk of their meetings virtually. And the staff has really become quite adept at doing that. And really, they've all skilled up, and I've been really grateful for their willingness to learn all that technology and to have very successful experiences. Even this week, our Black Librarians Conference will be primarily held virtually. So want a lot of credit to the staff for making that work out well. I suspect that even as we come back and more physical activity meetings, we will still continue to have some activities virtually. It works well from a time management standpoint for everyone. But there are a number of new hires in here and some internal changes. Few separations and employees go on inactive status, and one revision from last month's report. So I would submit resolution 30-2021 to you for your approval this evening.
Any questions from the board? Is there a motion to approve resolution 30? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Peterman.
Oh, he's no longer with us. We still have a quorum though.
Mr. Bixby.
Approved.
Dr. Mercado. Approved. Ms. Payne. Approved. Reverend Robinson.
Approved.
Judge Salinas.
Approved.
And Mr. Wolf. Approved. Thank you.
Judge Salinas, at this point, I would like to take just a moment to provide the board with a little information about two staff positions. You heard a reference earlier this evening to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer position being reposted. I want to provide a little bit more insight into why that was reposted. We did have a number of applications for it, and we still have those applications on file. However, in several discussions that I've had with the former chair of the HR Diversity Committee and with the board president over the last few weeks, we did actually make a change in the job description for the Diversity and Inclusion Officer. And the change that we have made in the job description does reference our interest in getting some certification if that's possible. That is something that we would like to see from the candidates. But more importantly, we have adjusted the job description to reflect what we believe will be this individual's highest priority at this point in time in our organization. If you think back to the work that Jessica did as our first DEI officer, her area of concentration was really on procurement and XBE participation. She did a great deal of work in general staff training, and of course helped us establish the Equity Council. But really, her big time commitment was on procurement and our XBE work. We're very excited about the success we've had in that area, and our XBE participation numbers right now stand at 59%. And that's a far exceeding our goal and something that we were very pleased to be able to achieve. But looking at the position now with a new individual coming in, we are making a commitment to this individual spending a significant focus of their time on human resources issues and concerns. And therefore, we are looking for an individual who will have the skill set necessary to provide that enterprise-wide focus on human resources. The staff in the Human Resources Department has agreed that this is an important area of work for us. They have recognized that the DEI officer coming in, while they're still going to be advising every single one of us, their focus, their priority work will be in looking at our human resources processes and procedures. We've heard loud and clear from many of you on the board that that's an important thing. So the applications we had did not reflect a lot of people with that strength. And so that is the main reason that we've reposted the position to see if we can find a pool of applicants who will in fact have experience in human resources and can help us perform better in that regard. The other personnel item that I do want to call to your attention, some of you may recall that we have a position in the library called a Diversity Fellow. We have 2 of these FTEs, and these are positions that we have created several years ago to be able to use when we have an opportunity to tackle some important area of development. And you may recall a librarian who had been working in the CMSA, the collection development area, and it was Nike, and she had been doing quite a bit of work on diversity in the collection. She was doing that as a diversity fellow because we really, for several years, did not have a position to actually work on that. However, due to the retirement of someone in that department and Deb Lambert's rearranging of some positions, she was able to create a permanent position to work on diversity in the collection. Nike has been able to be transferred to that position, hired for that position. And so now the Diversity Fellow FTE is once again open for a new opportunity. We have determined that an important way to use that Diversity Fellow for the next couple of years is to assign them within the HR department with a focus on recruitment and retention for diverse employees. And so there's a whole job description. The position is posted right now. We are looking for someone to join the HR staff with that area of concentration. And when you think about the things that are in our strategic plan and some of the things Garrett's going to highlight for you in a moment, you'll see that this will put some additional
staff time and energy to the wheel of our commitment about more diversity on our staff. So those are just two updates for you about what is going on with some of these staff positions that we're currently seeking to fill. The next item that I have on the agenda this evening is to ask Garrett.
There's a question.
Yeah, I think what, is John still here? I can't see.
Yeah, John.
Okay. I think I am gonna bring this up. This was something that was announced to us at our last meeting. It was a position from the building ambassador title was changed to library security assistant. One of the young men whose title was changed without his knowledge quit. And the reason he quit, he says, because I was just so excited, but he said, yes, I quit. I felt as though the disrespect and dismissive treatment I received was inexcusable and simply was not going to be bullied. So John I had asked him to see if there was some way we could talk to him about another position or something, because evidently his manager thought he was wonderful and tried to get his treatment just wouldn't allow that. So John, is it okay for John to respond to that?
Sure.
John? And I also want to thank you for the information that you gave me about the G4S and also the disaggregated information about the employees. Much appreciated.
You're welcome, Dr. Payne. I'm trying to think where to begin. It's a big question. So we did wind it back several months, made a commitment to bring our security function in-house. I think the board might remember me briefing you on that a few months ago. So we made a commitment to operate our security ourselves instead of having a contractor do it, G4S. So we created a position that would enable us to do that. We originally called it the building ambassador position. Our goal was to provide security with a little bit more of a customer service focus instead of a traditional guard approach, if you will. What we found when we started posting these positions and interviewing these positions was that our candidates were showing up without a clear idea of what we actually needed from them. It wasn't clear that we were asking people to actually be guards and provide customer service when they weren't, dealing with a security incident. The job description that we wrote, that I wrote, and then HR helped me write, wasn't communicating it. They were showing up expecting to perform mostly just general customer service in the branch. So in order to address this, we wrote a new job description, and in order to make it universal, in other words, in order to make sure that people we were bringing on into that adjusted job description agreed with the job descriptions of the people that were currently in that role, we did have to change that job description to match. And we set up a meeting with the young man from the West Indianapolis branch. I don't know if he's comfortable using his name.
Well, he's no longer with us, so it's Tyrone.
Sure, okay, with Tyrone. And we weren't able to hold that meeting to talk through the new job description because it did quit. I don't know why. I haven't communicated with him personally. I did talk with his manager. He did have a very high opinion of him, and he provided some excellent customer service. We just wanted to make sure that it was clear to him that, okay, this is a guard position. This is the new job description that we're going to be using. So we wanted to make sure that he was on board with that.
Well, as I understood it, the job description came out before, like the job description came out maybe on the 20th, but he wasn't told about till the 28th after it had already been posted.
Okay, I understand. I don't know what the discrepancy was in that timeline. Whenever we write a job description, it goes through a variety of steps through HR, through our appointment attorney, and et cetera. So I don't know what was between the approval of the job description and the communications with Tyrone. I just don't know what that timeline was. I can do some homework for you.
Well, I'm just really sorry we lost another employee, his 90-day period wasn't even up.
I agree. Again, I don't know why he quit. He hasn't communicated.
Oh, I know why, I just told you why.
Okay, I understand.
I'd like to raise a question about something that Molly Beaumont brought up earlier in regards to DEI certification. You know, she expressed, and I think it was so important, how she had cared about the positions that we had. And then now we're told that, oh, we want someone with DEI certification. And it's almost like we say, this is what we're going to do. And then we say, oh, the qualifications are going to be different now. And she had shared that she has worked with DEI, that she was really seeing possibilities in all the things that we were doing. She talked about what does it mean to be an ally in this work. And again, what we've done is it's almost like we say this, and then we come back, we go to HR, we say this is change up. It's tied to what you were saying. You know, we change it up, and then people are looking to say, okay, how do I fit into that position? So I deeply respect the fact that we would actually develop a position with this type. But the fact that we did not say in the very beginning of that position description that they had to have a DEI certification is a puzzle to me. I'd also like to go back to a point about what does it mean to understand what are the concerns that have been brought to us. If we keep doing this kind of thing, then we continue to undermine the patrons, but also the staff who work so hard to keep trying to qualify for positions. And so I applaud the attempt to do this, and I applaud HR for really trying to elevate the qualifications. But again, it's almost like, all right, now we think differently about this, let's change it up. So I find this process once again troubling, and it will be, from what I'm seeing now, this is a typical process, and it's starting to be very much about trust. And I said in my letter to the board that we need to talk about trust and how important it is. Even my own confidence in terms of being a researcher is being undermined in this conversation. And as a researcher, I'm fully knowledgeable and experienced in conducting studies that maintain procedures for anonymity, you know, of participants being able to use pseudonyms when necessary. I know how to do studies that complete that type of structuring of studies so that no one's name is given to the participants, for those participants, how you code a study. Garrett knows how to do this work and has done this work. I recommended that he be a part of this work. Again, we switch up, we build, we say we're going to do one thing, and then we switch. I'm getting very, very much concerned with this type of process. And I really do believe that this committee really cared a lot to make sure that there are qualifications that were spelled out. But earlier, it wasn't that way. And now we've redone it. So please help us explain, please.
I think that's, you bring up a good point. And it goes back to how like we went away from the committee and we created a task force with more people than we had. Sometimes ideas do change. And so I think it's very important that we look at each one of those and that we continue progress in those manners. I mean, there are certain things that, you know, change. We see different patterns like we did with the task force versus committee. But I think it's something that we should all take into account. And thank you for bringing that up.
I would like to, is this okay? As a post comment?
Actually, no, it's not time for public comment. I apologize.
I hear everything that's going on now, and it's like I pay attention. And we can't speak right after you guys are discussing it, but this is the important stuff. We have to wait until next month to talk about it, you know. So that's what I hear Dr. Masada and how everything's kind of being shifted this way and shifted that way. I know you just said I can't talk, but I was there at that 7-8 meeting, and it seemed like Curtis wanted Jackie to be on the committee. Since it was said that she couldn't be on the committee, that now we're going to use an outside party.
And that's what it
It's-
feels like as an outsider.
And I know we're not just having back and forth, but I mean, that
Dr.
was.
Murtada's
Hang on, man.
expertise here. That's all, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Can, we move, is it okay if we go on to the garage report? Sure. Mr. Mason?
Good evening, everyone. I know it's late, so I'll be quick. What you have before you in your in the board packet, the first section of that is a collection of all the metrics, measurables, summary of those items that are in the strategic plan currently. So you've seen that information before. So there's nothing new there. Of course, if you have any questions about any of those items, please reach out, let me know. I can provide any clarification that you need. I wanted to move on to page 75 in your packet. And that's where the new information is contained, the information that this body hasn't seen before. At the top, underneath the heading, it says operational. So these are items that were discussed internally, were internal initiatives that we identified. It was done largely at the EC level as a result of the work in the strategic plan. These were the items that we felt like we needed to do internally to help support the priorities of the strategic plan. So these are set up the same way as the items on the community or external side, the items in the strategic plan that you guys have all seen. These are just the more internal things, such as items about increasing revenue, budgetary items, things like that don't really speak to the delivery of enhanced services directly, like the items in the plan do for the community to read. But these are things that we need to do to help support those. So some of the things include increasing our internal communication and making sure that more staff are opening our internal newsletters, being more efficient in our utility usage, a section that Jackie alluded to earlier, talks about some of our work around our applicant pool and diversifying our workforce, and that those items are located in the organizational framework section of that, which is the last section on the first page, and then the only section that's contained on the last page, where some of the internal processes include a racial equity annual competency, aligning our executing intentional efforts to align our applicant pool with our demographics for the city, the staff survey, aligning our current staff demographics around the system to reflect our service area. And that's something that we look at semi-annually in terms of how our service areas are represented by our branch staff. And then the other items there, I don't want to go through all these items. So, so I would just offer these to you for your review. And if you have any questions, to reach out. I don't want to belabor anything since it's late. So take a look at these. If you have any questions, let me know, and we'll go into more detail about them. But the distinction is the ones in blue. Those are the community or externally facing ones in the strategic plan, and then the ones that are that have the what color that is?
Tan.
Okay, we'll go with tan. Tan and white that are under operational. Those are the internal initiatives to support the community objectives. So,
And the yellow is like financial.
the yellow was foundation. So, yeah, those are foundation specific. So not quite ours, but of course have to do with what we can deliver. So that's why we're all set a little bit differently. So
Thank you.
any questions?
Appreciate it. Yes.
The last item I have this evening under the CEO's report is a reminder to you all that the work on the Encyclopedia of Indianapolis is continuing. And we have included in your package this evening a brief article about the history of the encyclopedia, some description of our partnership with the Polis Center at IUPUI and the many other partners that we have in this project. There is a description in here of the governance structure that we have in place for the encyclopedia. And I'm very excited to be able to announce today that we have now fully named the members of the editorial board who will guide the encyclopedia in the years ahead. And the editorial board is going to be chaired by James Madison, who is a well-recognized historian here in Indiana and the author of many books. The editorial board is a very diverse group of people, and I'll be sharing that entire list of names with you. At the beginning of this article, you do see a live link there. That is the link to the beta version of the encyclopedia. There are over 1,900 articles already completed for the encyclopedia, as well as a number of special features. I think you will find it a very rich experience to log on to that and take a look at it. We're very excited that the public launch date has been identified, and that is on Thursday evening, September 30th at Central Library. This will be a public launch celebration of the encyclopedia. You may recall that the intent of this as it was designed and was really an important aspect of why we were able to receive funding to develop this, is that the encyclopedia will eventually relocate to be a service, a function, a product of the Indianapolis Public Library. And that continues to be our direction. And as we move into next year, you'll begin to see what is necessary in terms of the organizational work to take that on. But between our IT staff and our staff folks, such as our digital team and Stephen and the history group, we have lots of folks who are close to this and will be part of it in the future. But I just want you to get that date on your calendar. Judge Sarah Evans Barker is one of the co-chairs for the encyclopedia, and she will be there with us that day to help celebrate the launch of the encyclopedia. So please take a look at it. It's well worth a cup of coffee to see this new approach to sharing the history of our city.
My apologies to the board. I would like to put John Hancock on there. He's coming down there. Sorry about that, guys. All right. I'll remind the board that
Just before you do that, Jackie, I just wanted to know that we have a former board member here, Oscar, who served for a long time. Just good to see him with us tonight.
Thank you.
oh yeah.
Here in official capacity, working for EJ to assist
Thank you for that. Peggy.
Thank you.
We're very
Thank you.
grateful to have Oscar's help, especially with these bond issues coming up.
Yeah, please. All right, as far as future agenda items, I'll remind the board that if you have any future items for our meetings, please let us know.
I will be bringing back to the board, the full board, the climate improvement process with a great deal more detail, such that board member Biederman, who requested more details for this, I include the survey instruments that we will use, methods for anonymity, the case study analysis and how that will be approached. And I will bring back to the board the listing of individuals specifically with their bios so that they can be submitted. With all due respect to the diversity policy and HR group, as they continue to do this work that's so very important to impact and make a difference for the library patrons, as well as the staff who deserve this opportunity for equity of opportunity.
Our next meeting is August 23rd at 6:30. I want to thank everyone for being here. I appreciate it. Oh, we adjourned. You think I could use your hand?